Judge an arrogant lawyer, humiliate a humble housekeeper in front of everyone in court. Watch your tone with the judge, you incompetent maid. This isn't your house, said Andrew, an attorney, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You're the incompetent one, and so is your company, if you have to step on poor women just to feel big. Leah shot back, firm, her voice trembling but loaded with anger. Enough. Don't turn this into a personal fight. Let's proceed with the hearing, Judge Mark cut in, cold as ice. I'm going to say what I know, and I'm asking for this hearing to be recorded, Leah said, her voice thick with anger. Note that the party has requested recording. I'll decide later if it stands, Judge Mark replied dryly. I'm going to speak anyway, because everyone here pretends they don't know, Leah said, chest heaving, staring straight ahead like someone fixing her eyes on a spot to keep from crying. Andrew, the lawyer for the company Leah worked for, opened his briefcase and leaned over the table with a mocking smile, forcing everyone to look at him. I ask that Leah be ordered to compensate the company I represent for defamation, because it's clear she's just here for attention, Andrew declared with a sneer. You call it defamation when a woman worked through the night without notice, without transportation, and without pay. Leah shot back, her throat burning, faces shifted, and the silence grew heavy while Leah's breathing set the rhythm of the room. When we complained, our supervisors at the company said we'd lose our pay, that there was a line of people waiting to take our place, Leah said, her voice shaking with outrage. Andrew spread his arms and tapped his pen on the table, as if summoning the judge to the center of the game. There's no fact here, just incendiary speech. An empty claim, Your Honor, Andrew said, not bothering to hide the mockery. They were huge houses one person was forced to clean alone, and we were switched from one place to another overnight, without notice and with no right to say no, Leah said angrily, staring at her own hands, still rough with dried bleach. That's enough. I've heard too much. People like you shouldn't even be here, Judge Mark said, his voice frosty. I'm not going to stay quiet, Leah tried, lifting her voice with resolve. But the judge raised his hand abruptly, cutting her off. The sharp gesture sliced through the room, dropping everyone into silence. This session is adjourned. I'll schedule a new one that's quicker and more objective, Judge Mark said with the same coldness, already signaling to the court staff with his eyes. Leah felt the shock of the curt order, but kept her chin up, listening to chairs scrape and impatient footsteps around her. Quicker and more objective for you. For me, it's just more humiliation, Leah said hoarsely, lower now, staring at the backs of those who were already standing. The judge didn't answer. He simply flipped through the papers as if nothing had been said, while Andrew scribbled on a sheet with indifference, treating the hearing like pure protocol. She's walking out of here condemned for making things up. That's what she deserves, Andrew said coolly, not hiding his contempt. Leah heard it and took a deep breath so she wouldn't do anything rash. And if you keep pushing, your daughter might pay for your stubbornness, Andrew whispered, venom low in his voice. Leah turned, searching for the judge's eyes at the back of the room, but he just listened to everything and pretended nothing was happening. This isn't going to end like this, Leah said without raising her voice. At the exit, a young woman with hurried steps appeared and pulled Leah aside, introducing herself as Melissa, an intern there. Come here for a second. I called you because I saw how they treated you in there, Melissa said softly, glancing around. What do you want to tell me? Leah asked cautiously. Original, signed paperwork carries a lot of weight in here, so gather every document you have and keep them safe, because that's what can save you, Melissa said quickly, shifting her eyes away from the stream of people. I've got some documents. I'll pull everything together today, Leah answered, gratitude flooding her voice. Melissa nodded and stepped back to rejoin the flow. Leah went home and emptied every document she had onto the table, sorting notes, forgotten timesheets, a summons with the date altered by hand, and a few old doctor's notes. At dusk, Leah walked to the bus stop beside Helen, a friend who worked in the company's administrative office. "I'm scared. They're talking about making an example out of a complainant," Helen whispered straight ahead, her voice trapped inside. "Then don't mention me in there. Don't talk about our meetings." "Just let me know if you find out anything," Leah asked, gently holding her friend's arm like someone carrying a brimming cup. "I will, I promise," Helen replied, guilt in her eyes as she turned her face discreetly. The next day, Leah took a day job at one of the houses she still managed to find on her own. The owner greeted her with chilliness, and right in front of the doorman made it clear she didn't trust maids who take employers to court. The doorman laughed to please her, and the words clung to Leah like dust that won't come off even with water. She said nothing, grabbed a rag, and started cleaning in silence. When she finished, she gathered her things and went home, exhausted, hoping only to rest. But when she opened the door, what she found was the opposite. The kitchen window forced open, her daughter's backpack ripped on the floor, toys tossed around as if someone had rifled through them. Leah looked around, her heart racing, then ran to the cabinet where she kept the folder with her documents. "They took the papers," Leah said, hollow-voiced, staring at the empty folder like a hole in her chest. She went to the bedroom, woke her daughter gently and wrapped her in her arms. Without much explanation, she said they'd spend the night away. She walked to a neighbor's house and asked for a spot on the couch so the girl could sleep safely. Then Leah went back alone, crossed the silent living room, and stopped at the open cabinet, staring at the empty folder like a warning left for her. "I'm going to start over. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to find something they can't take," Leah told the dark kitchen mirror, like someone rehearsing her own courage. On the new hearing date, Leah arrived at court early and recognized the trap laid out before her, like a rug stretched to see if she'd trip. "Let's wrap this up. There's nothing to discuss. She should pay damages for breach of contract," Andrew said, brisk and satisfied. Leah felt her legs tremble, but her voice came out whole. "My evidence disappeared after they broke into my home. I didn't make anything up," Leah said firmly. The court security guard approached slowly, arms crossed, drawing attention. "Lower your tone, or you'll be held in contempt," Judge Mark said without lifting his eyes from the file. "I won't lower my tone when they're stepping on me," Leah replied, chin high, feeling the room close in. Outside, Melissa intercepted her, carrying in her eyes a warning too big for her mouth. "There's a way in, robust physical documents, stamped and signed, dated up to here," Melissa said, handing her a note, her hand slightly shaking. "If I show up with that, what happens?" Leah asked, urgent but contained, like someone afraid to scare a chance away. "With the right documents, they can bring in a prosecutor from the oversight office," Melissa whispered nervously, glancing around. Leah closed her fist around the paper and hurried home. When night fell, a shadow in the hallway knocked twice, fast. It was Helen, carrying a file box. "I brought some documents, but my hands won't stop shaking," Helen said, lifting the lid to show folders with original signed contracts. Leah drew in a breath of relief and leafed through them. Pretty promises of transportation, days off, and wages that had never existed in the real world. "I snuck into the department cabinet and took what I could," Helen explained, shame and fear knotted together. "You put your job on the line for me," Leah said, heavy with gratitude, setting the folders on the table. "The owner, Cole, uses these papers to flip the script on anyone who complains." "I've seen it up close," Helen said in a low, raspy whisper. The next morning, Leah picked the strongest contracts, including hers and those of co-workers confirming the same abuse. She put everything in an envelope and headed to the court clerk's office. She handed the papers over, watched the stamp come down, and felt the weight of that sound like a guarantee no one could erase. On her way out, she found Melissa in the corridor and quietly let her know she'd done her part. "Great. I'll attach them as exhibits," Melissa said, with the slightest nod, careful not to offer more hope than the moment could hold. The remaining contracts, left out to avoid drawing attention, went into Leah's home cabinet, now better hidden among blankets and an empty shoebox. 2 nights later, a frantic knock hit the door, and Helen stepped in with swollen eyes. "They found out I took the contracts and threatened my family. They gave me a deadline and told me to fix what I did," Helen said, breathless. Leah felt the floor drop out and tried to buy time without losing her friend, weighing each word. "I already filed the strongest ones. The rest are here with me, but tell me exactly what they demanded," Leah asked, desperate and cautious, opening the cabinet slowly. "They told me to make everything disappear and to bring proof that I obeyed," Helen answered, looking toward the door. Leah took the remaining contracts and put them in Helen's hands, a chill crawling up her spine as her friend pulled a crumpled matchbox from her pocket. "Forgive me. It's this, or they'll do something to me," Helen said, voice breaking, kneeling on the living room floor and arranging the documents. The first match flared, and the flame caught the paper, burning fast while Leah watched, struggling to breathe. "I have to film it. I need proof I did it," Helen said, hands trembling as she pointed her phone and recorded each sheet turning to ash. Leah clenched her fists until they hurt, each darkening page tearing away a piece of what she had rebuilt with patience and fear. The fire ate almost everything. The video ran to the end, and Helen hit send like someone pushing a boulder down a hill. "Done. It's already with the company. My family, maybe they're safe now," Helen said with a shaky sigh, crushing the rest of the flame under her shoe. Leah stared at the black stain on the floor and took a deep breath. "It's a shame you had to do that. But what really mattered is already safe. And I don't regret helping you because I know what they did to you," Leah said quietly. Helen swallowed her tears, thanked her in a choked voice, and hurried out, unable to look back. Morning came, and Leah headed downstairs, her head heavy and her clothes still smelling of smoke, when she saw a dark car parked on the corner, the window lowering slowly. "Leah," a tense voice called from inside. "Who are you, and what do you want with me?" Leah asked carefully, stopping an arm's length from the curb. "I'm Gary, Cole's son. I need to talk to you alone," Gary said, getting out of the car slowly so as not to scare her. "You're saying you're the owner's son?" Leah asked, hard-voiced, her distrust plain. "That's right, and that's why I'm here empty-handed. I just want you to hear me out," Gary pleaded quietly, spreading his fingers to show he carried nothing. "Then talk! No run around," Leah said sharply, scanning the area like someone measuring the shadows. "I worked at my father's side. I saw the scheme from the inside. And I want to fix what I kept quiet about," Gary said without hedging, swallowing hard before continuing. "Fix how? Words don't hold anyone up," Leah snapped, impatient, crossing her arms to hold back the tremor. "Here, listen to this at home, calmly. It's not safe out here," Gary said, handing her a flash drive through the window and gesturing for her to put it away. "And why should I trust the son of the man who's turned so many lives into hell?" Leah asked, bitter, weighing the object in her palm. "Because I'm tired of watching people like you get attacked," Gary answered, guilt plain on his face as he dropped his eyes for a moment. "What's on this flash drive?" Leah asked, softer now. "Before I tell you what's on it, I need to explain how the company's scheme works," Gary said, gripping the wheel and talking fast so he wouldn't lose his nerve. "Fine. Talk," Leah said firmly, not looking away. "The company recruits with pretty contracts and then humiliates people, cuts time off, delays pay, switches you to graveyard shifts, and docks your check for absences they make up," Gary said, speeding through the words, as if afraid he'd freeze. "And when someone complains, Leah asked, already knowing the answer and wanting to hear it from him. Andrew, the lawyer you've met, files countersuits to flip the blame and demand absurd damages. And those cases always end up in Judge Mark's hands, Gary answered, bitterness contained. By coincidence? Leah said, one eyebrow raised. For money. I saw envelopes being delivered to Judge Mark in exchange for quick rulings without reading, just to crush anyone who speaks up, Gary said plainly, looking her in the eye. You actually saw that? Leah insisted, prodding the wound to make sure it bled. I did, and there's more. My father records meetings with officials, not to use right away, but to keep everyone under his thumb, Gary said, steady, taking a deep breath. And those recordings are on here? Leah asked, lifting the flash drive discreetly. Part of them. He keeps copies in safes and reminds his allies that everything's on record. But what's on there is enough to open a door that's been locked to you, Gary said, nodding toward the empty street. And what do you want in return? Leah asked, wary. I don't want money. I want protection. And in court, I'll hand over the rest and tell everything I know, Gary said, honestly worn out. I'll listen to this tonight, and tomorrow I'll talk to the court intern to get you on the witness list, Leah said, resolute, pocketing the flash drive. I'll be waiting, Gary replied, getting back in the car and driving off. That night, Leah locked the door and powered on a neighbor's borrowed computer. She sat at the table, breath short and hands cold, and plugged in the flash drive. The first file opened with Cole's deep voice, welcoming Judge Mark into his office and arranging for cases against the company to be cleaned up in exchange for money. In another clip, Andrew detailed figures and amounts, laying out the strategy of demanding sky-high damages to break female employees. Leah opened a notebook and began to write down timestamps, names, entire sentences. Later files mentioned politicians, business owners, even police officers, names listed as part of the network that shielded the scheme. Every voice, every muffled laugh, made it clear these weren't isolated mistakes. It was an entire machine built to crush women like her. When the last file ended, Leah closed her eyes for a moment. Then she decided she couldn't carry what she had just heard alone and began separating what she'd need to bring in the morning. The next morning, Leah walked to the courthouse and found an empty hallway where Melissa appeared like someone who already knew the next step. I have something that needs to be delivered now, Leah said, handing over the flash drive, her voice low and her hand steady. Where did it come from? Melissa asked, worry in her eyes. From Gary, Cole's son. He's willing to testify under oath, Leah said plainly. I'll file it as attached media and notify the prosecutor about possible access, Melissa said, all business, tucking the device into an envelope. Hours later, Leah entered the hearing room and saw a prosecutor from the oversight office seated at the table, posture firm, making it clear the tone would be different this time. Bring in the stamped envelope with the contracts, please, the prosecutor said firmly, signaling the clerk to bring the documents forward. They're here, clause by clause, the clerk reported, and the prosecutor flipped through the pages like someone measuring the thickness of an old lie. We will now play the digital content that was delivered, the prosecutor announced with controlled neutrality. This proves nothing, Your Honor. It's a setup against the company, Andrew shouted, barely disguising his panic as he tried to drown out the audio. Denied. It's authorized and its source is documented, the prosecutor replied without raising his voice. I'm ordering this hearing suspended for lack of legal security, Judge Mark said, trying to take back control. From this point on, I'm directing the proceeding, the prosecutor stated firmly, staring straight at Judge Mark until the silence accepted his authority. The tinny sound of the PA cut through the room, and Cole's voice rang clear, calling Judge Mark by name and arranging case cleanups in exchange for money. "Do you recognize that voice?" the prosecutor asked the room, not hiding the weight of the question. "It's a crude fake," Andrew answered with forced disdain. "Call the witness," the prosecutor ordered. The door opened, and in walked Gary, moving carefully. "I'm Gary, Cole's son, and I confirm those are my father's and Judge Mark's voices and Andrew's," Gary said, clear and steady. "You're lying to save your own skin," Andrew barked, stepping forward as if volume could fix the past. "I'm not lying. My father recorded all of this to use against anyone who tried to turn their back on him," Gary replied, firm, looking straight at the prosecutor. "Record everything and bring in the next witness," the prosecutor said, signaling for the recording to continue. The door opened again, and Helen stepped in, face drained and shoulders tight. "I removed contracts from the company cabinet, and, under threat, I was forced to burn part of them in front of Leah," Helen said, her voice trembling yet steady, holding the prosecutor's gaze. "Who ordered the destruction?" the prosecutor asked with sharp calm. "It came from the top, to cover up abuse." "I filmed it and sent the video to prove I did it," Helen answered, shame and anger mixed together. "That doesn't matter. Burned paper changes nothing," Judge Mark said, trying to compose himself in his chair. "What matters is the threat behind it. Seize the devices in this room now and begin a search at the company headquarters," the prosecutor said decisively, turning to security. "This is abuse of power," Andrew yelled, but the word died when 2 security officers flanked him, inviting him to stay put. "I ordered Judge Mark's immediate removal from the bench, and I'm ordering the attorney's arrest now," the prosecutor said like a gavel, not even glancing at the judge. "I'm not leaving here in handcuffs," Andrew resisted, one last empty show of pride, trying to pull his arm from the hand already on it. "You'll answer to the law. And arrest warrants have already been issued for Cole," the prosecutor replied evenly, pointing to the door. Leah stayed still, feeling her legs sturdy for the first time in a long while, as she watched the prosecutor take control of the room with direct orders and sure steps. In the days that followed, rumor became clear news. Cole was arrested at home in the middle of the night with no time to react, taken away in handcuffs as neighbors watched in silence. Judge Mark was permanently removed and faced corruption charges. Andrew remained behind bars. The company was shut down by court order, its assets frozen, and the employees were called in one by one for compensation. Leah followed everything closely, feeling the weight of justice arrive where there had only been silence. What they tried to erase became evidence, became a ruling, became prison. And for the first time, Leah took a deep breath, knowing she was free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.